Good morning. It's now 10 o'clock, and I would like to call this meeting to order. This is our third public hearing, and it's regarding an inquiry into the operations of the Trinidad and Tobago Solid Waste Management Company Limited, with specific focus on the proposed measures to assist in achieving the objectives of the National Environmental Policy and Trinidad and Tobago's progress towards achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Anthony Vera, and I would like to extend a cordial welcome to participants and to the viewing and listening audience as well. We appreciate your attendance here today. Before I ask committee members to introduce themselves formally for the record, may I just indicate that Member Gopi Skoon has asked to be excused, and Member Adrian Leonce will be coming in and out as he has some ministerial duties to attend to. I will now ask committee members to please formally introduce yourselves.
Hi, Stephen McCarthy, member.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Lauren Lazama Leasing, member.
Problems. It froze.
Member Cummings. Member Mark.
Problems.
Member Lee. Okay, it appears that we're having some technical difficulties, but Member Mark, Member Lee, and Member Cummings will join us when they are reconnected. While we await those members, we do have with us officials from the Solid Waste Management Company, officials from the Ministry of Finance, and officials from the Ministry of Public Utilities. May I now ask those who are giving evidence today to please introduce yourselves.
Very good morning, all. Morning, Chairman. My name is Ronald Milford, and I am the Chairman of SWMCOL.
Good morning, Chairman. My name is Kevin Thompson, and I'm the CEO at SWMCOL.
Good morning, everyone. Maria Along. I'm the General Manager for Quality, Health, Safety, and Environment at SWMCOL.
Good morning. I'm Cedric Dewey, General Manager, Finance and Corporate Services.
Pleasant morning to the committee. I am David Manswell, General Manager, Communication, Sales, and Marketing at SWMCOL.
Good morning. I am Nicolette Duke, Acting Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Good morning. Ryan Maraj, Director, Aquabase, Manufacturing and Services Sector, Ministry of Finance, Investments Division.
Good morning. Junior Dwari, Acting Senior Business Analyst at the Investment Division.
Thank you all. And before
Good morning, Chairman, members. I am Beverly Khan, Deputy PS at the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Thank you, PS. Yes?
Chairman.
Yes, thank you. So I see Member Mark is now joining us. Before we start the official proceedings, a couple housekeeping matters. Remember, we are participating in a live public hearing which involves video link. Hearings by electronic means are conducted as though you are physically present. So when speaking, please do so clearly and directly, but not too quickly in the event there's a time lag. Also, when you are speaking, please make sure that you mute your microphone so that when you're not speaking, that will keep background noises to a minimum. Also, if you could please adjust your cameras so that your faces are clearly visible, and ensure that notifications from your cell phone and other electronic devices are muted during the course of the meeting. Time is limited. We need to conclude by 1 p.m. and I will be trying to keep us on time as there's a lot to cover. I remind participants that we proceed by question and answer, and we want to find out information and views from the witnesses. I encourage everyone to keep questions and answers as brief and focused as possible so that we can maximize the number of persons who have a chance to contribute. Committee members and participants are reminded to direct their questions and comments through the chair. Let's talk one at a time, use the raise hand feature, stay on point, and let's not interrupt when others are speaking. The purpose of this inquiry today, of course, is in relation to the administration, the manner and exercise of powers, and the methods of functioning at the Solid Waste Management Company, but with specific focus on the proposed measures to assist in achieving the objectives of the National Environmental Policy and Trinidad and Tobago's progress towards achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Participants are reminded that this session offers you a forum to share your challenges, your disappointments, your achievements, to voice concerns, and to make recommendations. They provide a unique opportunity to increase public awareness, to foster understanding, and to gain support in respect of your operations. This session is being broadcast live on Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel. Viewers and listeners can participate by sending comments relating to today's engagement via email at parl101@ttparliament.org or on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ttparliament or on Twitter @ttparliament. I now invite the chairman of the company to make brief opening remarks and to provide us with some salient information about the company. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chairman. A very good morning to the committee. We thank you for the opportunity to report on SWMCOL's stewardship of the mandate given to us by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. That mandate in brief includes establish and operate landfill sites in accordance with sanitary standards, manage the treatment and disposal of solid waste, promote, establish and operate resource recovery systems, and finally, public education and awareness. As the committee is aware, SWMCOL's mandate is linked to Trinidad and Tobago's fulfillment of the environmental and development goals. Today, the committee affords SWMCOL an opportunity to encourage the further expansion of our recycling programs, which are key to transforming activity in the waste sector. Our strategic plan for the 5-year period 2021 to 2025, which is currently in its final development phase and due to be rolled out by the end of April 2021, has clear linkages to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and the National Environmental Policy, NEP. SWMCOL can report on specific areas such as our progress towards establishment of a new engineered landfill at Forest Park, having developed the conceptual designs and having advanced the requisite studies to develop detailed designs. We can also report that voluntary cycling of plastics have increased by 10% through the programs we administer. SWMCOL recognizes the continued need for public education and is working on initiatives that specifically target our youths, the leaders of tomorrow, for whom the SDGs are becoming increasingly important. In this regard, our Littlebug Charlie character from our popular 1980s Chase Charlie Away campaign will become more visible and will be facing off against a cast of unique eco-heroes who provide advice and guidance on protecting the environment. Our objective is to deepen our engagement with the population in our waste reduction and recycling efforts, as we cannot continue co-mingling waste in the way we have over the last few decades. While SWMCOL manages the main landfills in the country, The waste we treat with by either landfilling or recycling is derived from the population, and we see our citizens and visitors as stakeholders in the business that we manage in trust for them. The NEP calls for a new approach to the human impacts on the environment, and SWMCOL is engaged in developing new approaches with various stakeholders to move us in that direction. Internally, our work on position papers for consideration by our line ministry during this fiscal year will continue to focus on solutions to other waste streams, such as e-waste and organics. Other areas of our mandate includes collaboration with others, such as beach, community, and post-disaster cleanups, as well as other events that we support with our partners. To achieve the goals of the NEP and the SDGs, SWMCOL needs to continue to collaborate with other entities, ministries, agencies, and of course, the general public. We thank you again for this opportunity and look forward to all of your questions. Thank you very much, Chairman.
And thank you, Mr. Milford. Well, I've been asked by my members to start the ball rolling. So I have a few questions to warm up, and then Member Mark will ask some questions, followed by Member Cummings, and then Member Lee Singh. So, Mr. Milford, the company was established in November 1980. You are about 41 years old now. Yeah? Your vision is to lead environmentally responsible waste management and to be the preferred service provider in Trinidad and Tobago. And your mission is to provide integrated and environmentally sound waste management solutions that promote maximization of resource value and a culture of care for the environment. That's correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Would you agree that climate change and environmental concerns are at the forefront of most countries today and most responsible thinking people?
Chairman, that is something that we all as citizens of this country should be aware of and make that high on our priority listing.
Yes, yes. Future generations deserve a clean and green environment. So waste management is critical to protect the country's soil, the country's groundwater, and our seas. Where would you say we are today in terms of having a culture of care for the environment?
Chairman, that is a question that is a very important question in the sense that I feel that we are so far away, quite frankly, from achieving our goals. As a people, I don't think we are there even close at this point in time when it comes to our regard for the environment. A drive to Maracas on any day through the Saddle Road will show you the amount of waste being accumulated along that stretch of road. I live in Santa Cruz, so I can tell you about that. I think companies like KFC and the Royal Castle can actually look at market share if they count the number of boxes that they see on the side of the roads. It is atrocious. Visit our rivers, visit our beaches, and you will see that we don't have the care that we should have for the environment.
So just by a rule of thumb, I mean, I'm not holding you to this, but how would you rate us as an environmentally responsible people on a scale of, say, 1 to 10? 1 being the lowest, 10 being the best.
I think we're somewhere between 3 and 4, Chairman.
As bad as that? Still
to go, yeah.
Now, I see that you've done a lot of very successful work with our landfills. Beetham, Guanapo, Forest Park. They receive an estimated 700,000 tons of waste a year, and that represents about 95% of the country's waste.
Correct.
So you are mandated with responsibility for, among other things, managing, collecting, treating, and disposing of all waste in Trinidad and Tobago.
That is correct.
Educating the public on their role in maintaining a clean and healthy environment.
Correct.
And you've just said that from your perspective, waste, the disposal of waste is one of the biggest problems facing the country.
Yes,
In
Chairman.
terms of the solid waste ecological footprint and achievements, where are we today with recycling?
Well, Chairman, I know we've actually, if you look at where we've been with recycling in terms of plastics, we've been moving that the number from what we did a few years ago. We are year over year, we're about a 10% increase. There's still a lot of work to be done. We have our facilities at Wanapo, we have Forest Park, as well as our Beetham collection points have been established. We have various collection points throughout Trinidad and Tobago for waste, for recycling. But I think we still have a long way to go to educate the population with regards to the importance of separating your garbage, as simple as that. And we are hoping that with the new beverage container bill that is coming, that we're presently working on through our line ministry, that comes to fruition very quickly. I think it's unacceptable that when you look at our CARICOM partners, such as, for instance, Barbados, they already have a very comprehensive recycling policy in place. And it's unacceptable that we as a country, we don't have it in the present, much less for the future. So we have a lot of work to do, but we are committed to ensuring that it gets done. This is, I use the analogy of we've got to make a start somewhere. It's like flying the plane and trying to, at the same time, improve the engines. But we've got to get started. And the beverage container bill is one of those items that are high on the agenda for SWMCOL to ensure that we give the ministry and the government all the support in ensuring that the bill is proclaimed in a short time. It's long overdue.
So I'm going to come down to that later on about the legislative improvements that you've been asking about. But when you talk about separating in recycling, we're talking about separating glass, paper, plastics. Yeah?
Yes. Yes.
Where are we with the disposal of fecal waste and things like hospital waste?
Well, we are not, unfortunately, when you come to bio waste, we depend on others to do that. We will then take it from there. We don't have the facilities to really accommodate that. I think the Chief Executive Officer could step in here. He's in a better position to answer that question, Chairman.
Chairman, with your permission, as our chairman has said, the current legislative framework has biomedical waste under the responsibility of the Ministry of Health. We work with them as partners for remediation, but biomedical waste in particular is not under the broad responsibility of SWMCOL.
Should it not be though? I mean, because you're supposed to be the specialist waste disposal company.
Well, Chairman, that I would not disagree with you. However, the current environment that we find ourselves, and just for clarity, there are other elements in the waste space that do not fall under SWMCOL. But this is the current legislative environment. You may be better placed to make those observations and to advocate for those changes. But this is where we are right now.
So biological waste would be, as you said, you depend on others. What about things like the disposal of old and discarded electronics?
So e-waste would fall under our purview. We are working on position paper for the attention of the ministry and then for further consideration by the cabinet.
Right. Now, I know you talk about legislation. Now, I have traveled in different parts of the world where I see waste is actually being converted into energy, into fuel, like in Denmark. Is that on our agenda at all?
Chairman, if I may, yes, to answer your question. Like you, that is one of the areas that this board is closely looking at. In fact, we've had inquiries from international institutions to assist us in that process. You can well imagine that garbage has money. It's just that we have not been able to effectively harness the methane gas. That's what they do. They harness the methane gas and use that to assist in power generation. For instance, in Toronto, coming from the airport on the highways, you will see those mounds, green, very attractive mounds. They are actually waste that is being harnessed. The methane is being harnessed from there to and captured to assist in the power generation of their power plants. So there's certainly opportunities for us there. And it is the intention of this board to seek out those organizations that are willing to assist us in that process. And, you know, I don't think many people understand how many organizations there are out there that are willing to assist. And my line minister and I have had several discussions on this, and we will be pursuing that avenue.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the question about waste and money, because I want to talk about money now and about the possibility of solid waste becoming entirely self-sustaining, and not just sustaining itself, but generating income. When I looked at the submissions and I looked at the operating costs for 2018, 2019, 2020, 41 plus million in 2018, 42 plus million in 2019, 32 plus million in 2020. We are talking about over 200 million over the last 5 years. Now, that's a lot of money. I accept that the company has done a lot of work in terms of preparing reports and position papers to guide policy development. And I know that, for example, like with facilitating the management of emerging waste streams. And I see that you have presented very nice organizational charts showing the structure of the company. And you appear very proficient in terms of your internal governance and administration. Lots of plans, lots of goals, but I get the sense that the company is still very much in a state of flux. And I'm very concerned about the fact that there's been little or no progress in some of the macro items. For example, harmonization of national policies relating to waste management. No progress. Facilitating reduction of food waste at retail and consumer levels. No progress. Sustainable management and efficient use of natural resources. No progress. Amending existing legislation. No progress. Combating marine litter. No progress. A cynical person may inquire, are we spending millions of dollars for outreach programs, nice reports, and annual beach cleanups? So my question is, in light of all of these failings, this lack of progress, what would you say to those who may accuse the company of underperformance or that we are not getting value for money?
Mr. Chairman, I would say that that the business of garbage is, as well as we could earn income, is a very expensive undertaking also. Majority of those funds that you see being spent there really being spent on operational issues such as the collection of garbage, the operation of our landfills. The issue with SWMCOL is that we are hamstrung, and we are hamstrung because we haven't gotten enough. I hate to say this, but we haven't gotten enough funding to really do those outreach programs, to do the marketing that is required. The monies that we're getting right now is really goes towards maintaining the operations of the landfills and the collection of garbage. That is why it's so important for us to look at other avenues, as I said just a while ago, for SWMCOL to become more proficient in the collection of money rather than the spending of money. There are opportunities, and we have to seek out those opportunities so that we could assist in reducing our dependence on the Treasury.
Right. So you spoke about it, and the CEO spoke about the hazardous waste, for example. Now, this is a company that was set up to control, treat, and dispose of waste, yet you don't handle this hazardous waste. You said that you depend on others. So other entities will treat hazardous waste before you can accept it. Who are those others? Who handles hazardous waste?
I'll hand over to the CEO. I'm not familiar with all of the details with respect to the handling of hazardous waste.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to defer to Maria Along or QHSC GM.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Through the chair. Are you all hearing me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Hazardous waste. The characteristics of hazardous waste, currently SWMCOL facilities will not be able to handle. So what happens is that there are several entities in the country who handle hazardous waste. They would treat it, make it inert, and then they would actually dispose of it, or we can actually dispose of it by entombment once they are rendered inert. I'm unable to actually name those persons or entities at this forum, but there are facilities who are able to handle hazardous waste within the country.
So do you pay those other entities to handle hazardous waste for you? Or, I mean, how is it dealt with?
Yeah. Okay, so through chair again. So just as the NEP has waste, will then be responsible for engaging those contractors to treat and dispose of that waste.
Right. So it's,
and then.
Sorry. So it's a person who generates a hazardous waste that has responsibility. So it's not to say like it's another waste disposal company. Correct. It's a generator of the waste.
Yes.
Right. So what would you say is your competitive advantage? Solid waste competitive advantage?
Chairman, we, mindful of our mandate, SWMCOL is doing two things. SWMCOL is providing a service that is a public good in terms of managing the landfill on behalf of the government and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. But on the other hand, in terms of our commercial side, we do provide services in terms of commercial waste management. And our competitive advantage there has to do with the deep technical bench that we have. The SWMCOL brand, as you mentioned, we are over 40 years established. And in fact, that we can provide and we have provided services, not just in Trinidad and not just in setting up of the landfill in Tobago, but over time we have provided services throughout the Caribbean in terms of setting up structures to deal with waste management.
Okay, so thank you. I'm going to come back a little later to talk about some of the gaps that you have identified and about the legislative aspects. But I would like to hand over now to Member Mark. Member Mark?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And let me welcome, as you have done on our behalf, the officials. Mr. Chairman, if I may ask a question arising out of your inquiry before I deal with my specific areas. I would like to ask the chairman or the CEO, when contractors dispose of hazardous waste, is there a system of zoning that is known to SWMCOL for those hazardous waste to be deposited, or can contractors choose their own areas for disposing of the waste, the hazardous waste? Can you clarify for this committee?
Chairman, through you, I'd refer that question to our Chief Executive Officer.
Member Mark, thank you for your question. It is our understanding that there's no legislation related to what you have spoken about. But with respect to how SWMCOL treats with it, I will reinforce what has already been advanced by GM of QHSE. When we are alerted to any hazardous material, we as SWMCOL, on behalf of the government and the people, ensure that the hazardous material is rendered inert before it can be accepted at one of our facilities. So we help both the producer of the hazardous material. I think PowerGen comes to mind. They have, in the recent past, asked us to assist in that regard. We have identified for them a competent person to render the material that they had identified inert. And then we have created a space on our facility where we provide entombment of the treated material that is now inert and now unable to cause adverse effects to the water course or the soil in the area. So that is how we would treat with it. As to, as member is aware, as all of us, there are people out there that do things outside of the legislation and outside of the recommended practice. SWMCOL does not have any, we don't have any enforcement division in that regard. And we are not an authority under the current legislative arrangement either. So all that we can do is provide the assistance when asked to ensure that the laws are complied with.
So may I?
Member Mark, sorry to interrupt you. We got a question from a member of the public, and while we're just on this point, and I'll come back to you. The question that was asked is, what is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal for the purpose of recycling plastics, glass, and waste? And is there a national recycling policy?
See you. Would you?
In terms of the SDGs, we don't generally differentiate, SDG 1 or 2 or 5. We know inside SWMCOL, our focus is on SDG 6 and more so with SDGs 11 through 17 as they affect our particular operation. But SDG 12, I think, would speak to that matter of plastic recycling. But our approach is, as is the National Environmental Plan, to look at ways that we can more sustainably engage with the materials that come to us. So it's not just about, whether it is plastics today or e-waste tomorrow, but all of what is coming to us, we are stewards in trust for the government and the people of products that are coming to us. As the chairman mentioned, through our education programs, we hope to reduce the amount of waste coming to us, and also through our recycling programs, we hope to transform the waste that is coming to us, and hopefully, as the chairman also mentioned, to do so profitably to assist in our subvention from the government.
But Mr. Thompson, as a steward, would you not be operating within a policy? Is there a national recycling policy?
I believe there is a national recycling policy, and we do operate within that.
Member Mark, sorry, yours.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if there is a national recycling policy, is solid waste responsible for generating that policy, or is there another entity that they are aware of that is responsible for that national recycling policy?
If I may, Senator Mark, we are the ones that have been tasked with leading that charge in terms of ensuring that the national recycling policy is in place. We're the ones that actually have been tasked with doing the research And we have been working very closely with our line ministry in ensuring that that policy is supported. Hence the reason we have taken a very active role in the development of the Beverage Container Act, Policy Act. We have been the ones leading that charge and we continue to do so. So to answer your question, yes, we are out in the front of this whole policy and designing the policy with regards to how we manage waste or recycling in this country.
Can I ask whether you can make available to this committee a copy of the SWMCOL's national recycling policy?
Sure.
Now, Mr. Chairman, may I also ask, in the absence of a centralized, coordinated policy framework for the disposal of hazardous waste, would you share with us whether there is chaos, recklessness, and irresponsibility by certain entities that may be engaging contractors without your awareness, without reference being made to you, and those contractors are dumping whimsically, arbitrarily hazardous waste throughout Trinidad and Tobago without the knowledge of SWMCOL and without the knowledge of the relevant authorities. Can you clear the air for us on that matter?
I would say, Senator Mark, that as an organization, we are unable to police the entire population with respect to how and where they dispose of garbage, whether it be hazardous waste or other waste. That has always been a challenge. That is a real challenge for organization. But it goes deeper than that. It goes to the psyche of the people of Trinidad and Tobago and the whole legislative framework that is designed to assist us in combating that. I mean, you talk about hazardous waste, but when you look at tires and how they are dumped all over the country, SWMCOL cannot police. We don't have we really don't have the infrastructure to police that. We don't. And what we are asking for eventually is legislation that would assist us in doing that. You know, where is it? You know, we have anti-littering laws in this country, but do we? Is it enforced? These things, and you raise a very good question, Senator. How do we manage our environment if we as a people aren't doing enough on our own to be part of the solution? You know, one of the things is that we all want change, all want a better environment. But when the time comes for the change, we meet with resistance from various quarters. And that is the issue.
And this is why, Mr. Chairman, I would like you to share maybe with this committee the need for us to assist SWMCOL in the areas that you consider to be quite crucial to deal with the whole question about the environment and the role that you must play, but you can play. But there are gaps, there are limitations, there are deficiencies. Let us know and let us see how, as a committee, we can bring these matters to the attention of the Parliament. So I just wanted to leave that with you. Now,
thank you very much.
The other question I'd like to raise, and I don't know who would be able to answer, this one is simply this. What is the relationship like between the Industrial Sanitation and General Workers Union and SWMCOL today? Can you share with us what is the relationship like?
I'll put that question through you, Chairman, to our CEO. He's in a better position to answer that question.
Thank you, Member Mark. Thank you, Chairman. The union is the Industrial and General Sanitation Workers Union is one of two recognized unions here at SWMCOL. With both unions, we meet regularly. That is to say, there are issues that come up from time to time that we deal with. I would not want to characterize our relationship with them without their agreement, but if I am to judge from our past interactions where they had a very vociferous and public disputes with us, and now where we have been working together as partners and stakeholders as we ought to resolve various issues, and we are doing so, I think, internally and speaking to each other as we should on a regular basis. I would say our relationship is improved, but I would also say it is not perfect, and there remains room for other work to be done.
There was a claim some time ago that made, of course, by the union that their members were the lowest paid in the country in relation to sanitation workers. Would you want to advise us as to the veracity of that statement?
No, but
Chair, sorry, Member Mark, thank you for your question again. I believe we investigated the claim. I believe that with respect to one or two of the categories that they identified, there was some difference with similar type jobs in the Port of Spain Corporation. But in that investigation, we also identified that we were also paying at better rates for other positions. So better can always be done. And if we are to compare, I think the approach that the CPO has taken is to do market-based surveys, which I agree with. I think that provides a good platform to have a discussion rather than trying to identify always the lowest, but to ensure that we are treating fairly with our workers in the marketplace. I think that is an approach that I can support, and that, as I understand it, is the approach that is being taken.
What, could you identify the name of the other union?
Yes, the name of the other union is the Banking and Industrial General Workers Union.
Okay. Now, in your submission, pages, I think it's page 11, you indicated that SWMCOL continues to work with the Occupational Safety and Health Agency to improve its working conditions and compliance. Could you tell us what is the reason for SWMCOL's failure to comply fully with the OSH Act?
Thank you, Senator Mark. Before I hand you over to the CEO, because he might be in a better position to identify some of the gaps, over the last 5 years, we have been working towards improving the way we manage occupations safety and health. One of the major issues we have in addressing all of the issues is really a matter of funding and finding the necessary funds to to ensure that every aspect of our operations are safe. And I'm going to be frank, it is a work in progress. It's been engaging the attention of the board in a very serious way. We have seen some improvement, but we still have some gaps. And that is present, those gaps are presently being addressed. I'll hand you over now to the CEO if he wants to add anything else. But from where the board sits, we see some of the areas of opportunity for improvement.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member Mark. Our approach has been to conduct a program of activity, having identified deficiencies. We continue to conduct a program of activity to address the deficiencies. As the chairman says, we do have some challenges with the funding at times, but that notwithstanding, we try to prioritize the working conditions and the safety of our workers. So that takes preeminence. In terms of the compliance, I would like to say that of the areas identified, I think 67% have already been fully rectified. All of the other areas are in progress, and our expectation is by the end of June that we should have these other works done. Again, with respect to some of the major things that require capital outlay, such as we need new plant facility at Beetham to deal with the number of people that we have there. We have, through the kind intervention of the previous minister, had a new building at Beetham, but other things remain to be done to ensure that we are in compliance fully with the OSH Act. But we are making good progress, as the chairman has identified, and we believe that we will get there shortly. Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, my final question for this round, may I ask the chairman of SWMCOL, we read in your submission that there are several litigation matters involving a number of private entities and SWMCOL. Would you like to share with this committee what are these matters, the entities that are involved, and can you provide us with the costs associated with those litigations?
Thank you very much for the question, Senator Reid, Mark. I will, again, after my statement and to respond to your question, I will revert the CEO, but there is one in particular that has, where a contractor's employee was damaged on one of our locations. And it was a contractor's employee, and that case is presently being contested. There was a judgment against us, which we tried to set aside. So right now we're in the negotiation phase to try to reduce the amount of the exposure. Initially, it is around 1.5. However, it is we are trying to bring that down, and I wouldn't like to go into all the details
Yes,
of the negotiations, but it is something we're working on to settle that particular case. I don't know about any other, maybe the CEO, over to you if you can address Senator Mark's question.
Thank you, Chairman. With respect to the other litigation matters, they deal with, as the Chairman has noted, same and similar type of incidents, as well as individuals, employees that have identified grievances that they are taken to the normal industrial process. But we will be able to provide that answer in writing so that we can get a full idea of the costs involved as we estimate them at this point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Member Mark. Member Cummings?
Chairman, I'll allow Member Leasing to go.
Okay, thank you. Member Leasing?
Thanks very kindly. Thanks, Member Cummings. Chairman, thank you so much. Good morning again, everyone. And thank you so much for being here with us. First of all, I must establish my appreciation for the entity that is SWMCOL and the work that it is required to do as we try to meet the requirements of the Sustainable Developmental Goals with a target of just over 8 years away of 2030. And I heard your CEO speaking to the fact that SWMCOL is responsible, or would take the lead rather, for goals 6 and 11 to 16, if I'm not mistaken. I must establish as well that I have heard you speak about the campaign of Charlie, and it brought me back to my very, very early childhood. I was just about 4 or 5, I think, when Charlie would have just come about. And recently I was having a discussion with somebody who told me that Charlie was actually coming back. Now, I remember Charlie to have been a very effective campaign back in the mid-80s, just around there. And I really would hope that the Charlie campaign would in fact take full flight very soon, because I'm not sure that I have children who are the age that I would have been back then. And I don't know that they are sufficiently aware of Charlie or of things of that nature. So I want to just start by encouraging you, please, to do as best as you can, given your resources, on coming up with creative ways of creating campaigns really for environmental consciousness. That said, I noted as well, Mr. Chairman, that you would have spoken about there's a 10% increase in voluntary recycling, and there's a need for us to, for your company, us to deepen engagement with the population. And I wanted to know, beside the Charlie campaign, what other initiatives would have been put in place or are on the table for that deepening the engagement with the population. So I'd start with that question, and then I have several other questions, but I wouldn't take all your time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much. The communication process is a very important one. Let me begin by saying that, and yes, we're coming back with the Charlie campaign, but Charlie 2021, 2022. We're giving Charlie an upgrade to be more relevant in today's environment, okay? The process of education has to start with really educating the population on where we are right now as a country when it comes to the waste that we generate. I mean, we generate as a population way too much waste, which we estimate more than, and maybe the CEO could correct me on this, more than 60 to 70% can be recycled. So the entire process that we'll be engaging in is not only to put the garbage in the bin, but put the garbage in the right bin, whether it be for bottles, plastics, paper products. That has to be part of the whole campaign, not just putting it into one garbage that we are accustomed doing. Worldwide, that doesn't happen. And what I'd like to say is that, you know, we have grown so accustomed in Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm not saying that will discontinue, to having our garbage picked up 3 times a week. In many developed countries, you would find that happens once a week, sometimes even once a fortnight. And there are strict limitations with regards to how the garbage is separated into plastics. And the communication process has to take that into consideration, how to educate our population in starting to recycle from home. That's where it starts. And so when it gets to the landfills, or it gets to our sorting structures or provisions that we have at the various landfills, we're in a lot better place to manage the waste. But to answer your question, we are going to be using all forms of media to communicate our message, whether it be social media, traditional media, posters, billboards, etc. We really need to clean up to get the message out there, and that is the format will be, generally speaking, it's all included in our strategic plan for 2021-2025, which, as I said earlier, will be ready at the end of April.
Okay, thank you very kindly for that. Can I ask you then, therefore, if we are encouraging our citizens to have their garbage sorted in different ways, so plastics, glass, paper, aluminum, etc., what is the state of readiness of the receiving sites for these different things? So we sort it on our end in our homes and in our communities. What is the state of readiness for the receiving sites?
Well, this is all also dependent on the bill. We have been working assiduously to achieve the ability for us to, we are already separating at some of our sites already. We already have equipment doing that. And I will tell you this, as I said, it's like flying the plane and trying to upgrade the engines at the same time. We have to make a start somewhere. And I think we have made a start. We just need the material to start sorting. Once we get that done, we will upgrade our facilities to ensure that we can handle all of the recycle items coming to us. I'll tell you this, there are private sector companies that have approached SWMCOL throughout the years to assist us in showing us the way forward. People are interested. We have companies that are interested in plastics, in plastic recycling for exports, for instance, biodegradable plastics for exports. And that may be another form of income for SWMCOL and the country in general, because we will be, they'll be exporting, that's US dollars coming to the country. Those are the kinds of opportunities we have to look for. So SWMCOL, I would say, will be ready once we start the process. We started the process, and we want to continue the process, and we have the legislative support.
Thank you very kindly. So this leads then to something that you have submitted to us, which speaks to what we're speaking of now, the alternative sources of funding through international agencies. Now, can you clarify that for me in the first instance, please? Is it grant sourcing, or are you talking about business transactions and partnerships with other international organizations or organizations situated in other countries that have a similar mandate? Can you please clarify that for me?
Yes, most certainly. Thank you for that question, actually. It's a mix of all. We have private sector companies that are interested in international agencies that are interested in assisting us with this whole process. We have companies that private sector companies and government agencies external to Trinidad and Tobago that are willing to assist us. In fact, the minister and I, my line minister and I have a meeting this week with a particular ambassador who is willing to assist us with in funding some of these projects. So to answer your question, there is a wide range, in my opinion, of opportunities for us to access funding, whether it be grants in some cases or direct investment into some of the projects that we're looking at.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very kindly. I want to ask you now, please, in your most recent audits, which you would have submitted, question 10, pages 2 and 3, you listed 8 issues that had been flagged. SWMCOL had engaged an accounting firm to do a diagnostic and provide recommendations for action to resolve the issues that would have been identified. In addition, SWMCOL has approved a fraud policy and work is ongoing. Can I ask you, please, if you can let us know which accounting firm was engaged to complete that diagnostic? When will you receive the recommendations? And if you have any timelines for the completion of the supporting policies? Thank you.
Yes, the completion of the policy will be, well, the completion of the exercise will be presented to us at the end of April this year. Through the tendering process, we awarded the contract to PwC. They are the ones that are actually doing a complete diagnostic of our operations, which will include finance, IT, HR, HRS system, and taking an in-depth look at our operations in order to still highlight those opportunities for improvement and close the gaps. We thought it was prudent for us to go that route to get somebody with international exposure to help us in this entire process.
All right, thank you very kindly. Chairman, I just have two other questions, please, if that's all right. I'll be very, very brief.
Sure.
In your submission manual, you indicated that SWMCOL's most recent audit for fiscal 2018. Yes. Given that the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual requires that within 4 years of the end of the financial year, you need to submit that. Is there any particular reason why audited financial statements had not been submitted within the stipulated timeframe for 2019-2020?
I will have to defer that question to the Chief Executive Officer. This board has been around December 2020.
Yes, so, I know you're a very recent appointee.
So if I could ask the Chief Executive Officer to step in here and assist in answering your question.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member. As the Chairman, I am a fairly recent vintage as well at SWMCOL. But what I can say is that within the last year, not only have we done the 2018 and the 2017 audits, but we are in the process of completing 2019. So what I can say is that coming into SWMCOL, we identified that there was a gap according to what is stated in the STEPM, and we tried to bring the company into compliance. The only thing now that is keeping us back from 2019 is simply having the 2018, which we are awaiting feedback as to the AGM for that to be accepted, and then we'll be moving forward to 2019, and shortly thereafter, we expect to have 2020 in compliance with the guideline.
Thanks kindly for that response. And so then I have to take this opportunity to congratulate this new incarnation of leadership of SWMCOL, Chairman Milford and the CEO and your team. I'm very happy. I'm delighted to see that you are making it a priority to have those audited financial papers, documents submitted in the shortest possible order. And I want to congratulate you for all the work that you have done. And I just want to encourage you, please, because the communication part of it and the population buy-in and mindshare is critical to even your own financial sustainability and your survival in the future and the survival of our island. We're seeing exactly what is happening around the world. Global warming is a real thing. Climate change is happening. We are a small island developing state. We are very vulnerable. And we are seeing what's happening right now, for instance, with our neighbors in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we don't know what else is going to happen throughout the region otherwise. And we don't know what will happen to our islands in the future. And so I want to thank you and encourage you to work on getting that national population buy-in insofar as the fulfillment of the Sustainable Developmental Goals and insofar as the importance of recycling and preservation of our environment. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairman Vera.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Lizama Lee Singh. Member McClatchy.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me say on the offset that I am impressed with the operational work that SWMCOL is doing and your look into the future with regards to what will become SWMCOL. However, the only way you get this done is through people. And therefore, I would like to inquire a couple questions with regards to your establishment and where your skill sets for achieving these things could come from. So I note that the staff would have moved in 2016 from 221 to a high of 334 in 2019, and then to 300 in 2020. But what exactly is the establishment, the approved establishment for SWMCOL at this point in time?
Thank you very much for that question. I will have to divert that question to the Chief Executive Officer with respect to the staffing and and how many staff we have on, and what is the optimal staff requirements for SWMCOL.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member. With respect to the variance in numbers that you have identified, there's a direct correlation between the new activities that SWMCOL has been asked to undertake and the expansion of our mandate by the government. I believe in 2018, we would have received an expansion to our mandate, giving us some of the powers of a proposed waste management authority. That expansion would have been about 20 persons that were added to the structure through Cabinet's approval. And then in addition, as the Chairman would have mentioned, we have already started, in respect to Member Leasing's question, the Chairman would have mentioned that we have already started in terms of processing the bottles, the plastics, the cans, the aluminum, the paper at SWMCOL. And that, again, that jump in staff has to do with those numbers. Some of it is a seasonal activity, but at this point, we are working with our line ministry on strengthening the policy around what, or the shape really, around what the new beverage bill could be. And we are also trying to keep the numbers fairly steady. We don't want to expand, given that there are a number of questions that we need to be given policy guidance on before we can make commitments in terms of our human resource. So we feel at this point that we have a staff complement that is able to treat with the challenges that we have, and we continue to work with that staff. Importantly, Member McClatchy, as respect to some of the training, which I believe is where your question may be headed, we have over the last year done a competency gaps and identified training, partnered with the NESC, and we have engaged them and our people in terms of training, in terms of the basic crafts that are needed here at SWMCOL. And we do see good positive outcome from that at this point, and we expect that training again to be completed within the end of the second quarter.
Okay, a follow-up question. Your mandate is quite wide, and where you're taking SWMCOL seems to be going exponentially in a different dimension from where you have been operating. Are you satisfied that you have the right skill sets at the management and middle management level to accomplish this mandate?
Thank you very much for that question, sir. The simple answer is no. There's a lot of room for improvement, and that is why we've engaged the services of PwC to help us identify those gaps as we prepare the company for the future. And all these projects that we want to undertake and to really revamp how we look today. That is why we've sought and we've gotten expert assistance in preparing the company for the future. I think we have a strong leadership team. I think what has to happen is the line management is I would say strong also. We do have some gaps in terms of training, which we hope that the PwC report will highlight. We also did another report, I think a year ago, which was the Odyssey report. That also pointed to some gaps that we had within the organization as we prepare the organization to achieve all of these things that we want to achieve in the future. Once we also have a subcommittee set up by the board to actually go through and have an understanding for what the suggestions that are being made so that we can track the implementation of those recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that. Chairman, I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Member McClatchy. Member Cummings?
Thank you, Chairman, and welcome to the team from SWMCOL and from the ministry as well. I am quite pleased myself with some of the work that SWMCOL has been doing. I want to welcome the new chairman, Mr. Milford, on board. I want to ask, I think Member Mark touched on it a bit, but I wanted to ask in relation to illegal dump sites across the country, does that fall under the responsibility of SWMCOL? And if so, what is in train to treat with that issue?
Again, these sites are illegal. So normally what happens in a case like from what I know, is that these dump sites are actually, if they identify, the regional corporations are actually called to assist with the removal of the waste material. I think in order to, we have to look at this whole situation from a very holistic standpoint. There is legislation in place to prevent that type of activity from happening. I think what has happened over the years, quite frankly, is that the enforcement has not been as effective as it should be. We've seen recent examples of tires being dumped in some areas, in rural areas in Trinidad and even in Tobago. And I think I don't think we need to have more legislation. I think we need to have more enforcement. And if SWMCOL, can recommend anything at all, is that we start enforcing our laws. And we start holding people accountable for when they practice this illegal, very illegal activity. I can tell you where I live, just in the street to come into where I live, that's an illegal dump site. And I have to be calling the San Juan Regional Corporation on a regular basis to have the waste materials removed. I think this also goes towards what we were talking about earlier, the education process. When we talk about illegal dump sites, a lot of them are within our waterways, which leads to flooding, severe flooding. And then we have, the complaints that, we're not dredging our rivers properly. But when we dredge the rivers, we've seen refrigerators, stoves, washing machines coming out of the waterways. Is that unacceptable? Should we accept that? What we should be doing is ensuring that those kinds of illegal activities cease and desist. And those who are perpetrating those, I call it criminal activities against the environment, should be held accountable. And if SWMCOL needs to get involved, right now we're not the police, but if we need to get involved in some way or fashion with regards to assisting in that process, I can tell you we would certainly be willing to do so.
Chairman, do you see, for instance, solid waste playing a role in assisting or coordinating with the corporations to address an issue like that? Is that a possibility? One. Two, in terms of the collection of tires, could you update us on what is in place for drop-off sites for tires, whether we have centers across the country that people can do that? And what is the possibility also of a collection site for white waste, so that, because the regular garbage collection will not take that up, and therefore residents might be able, if they know that there's a location they can drop off their used refrigerator or fridge, etc., at stoves, etc., they can do that. That will help us with not having so much of these items in the waterways and so forth. Those three matters, yes.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Member of Parliament. To answer your first question, most definitely. I would say that we as SWMCOL will be willing to work with the regional corporations to address this situation of illegal dumps. We're prepared to offer whatever assistance that we can to alleviate this illegal activity from continuing. With regards to the other question, if you would allow me, I'll hand you over to our Chief Executive Officer, who can answer your, I'm sure can address those questions. I will like, however, after he's completed, to let you know something that we're doing with respect to the tires that has come up very recently. Mr. CEO, if you can.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member. With specific regard to the white waste question asked by the member, I would offer a slight modification in terms of his perspective. The white waste is supposed to be collected by the municipal corporations.
It is.
And our understanding is that it is. And when it comes to us, we would normally take care of it by identifying stakeholders in the informal sector that would then work with the white waste and produce either parts, or they would produce, or they would look to recycle particular elements of the waste. So there is some effort being made in that regard. There is a structure for the white waste to be considered, and it is being handled in that way. With respect to the tires, I hand back over so firstly, we do collect tires. We do so on behalf of the government as part of our mandate through the direction of this board and the previous board. In 2020, SWMCOL stopped disposing of the shredded tires in the landfills. We continue to look for opportunities with partners to not just be part of an old way of doing things as members would have seen and would have come to the view, but we continue to look for other opportunities. And Chairman, I think you have some more to offer in that regard.
Yes, thank you, CEO. The problem with perennial problem, I'd say, with tires, I mean, we have approximately, we estimate between 800,000 to 1 million tires, used tires that annually that we have to deal with as a country. And there are some very innovative ways to use the whole tires. And one such way that we're looking at, and we're exploring, and we're doing all of the background work, is the protection of our coastline. We have a major issue, especially on our East Coast, with regards to coastal erosion. We've seen in the past, a few years ago, what happened in the Manzanilla area. And there are companies out there that are actually using whole tires, believe it or not, to assist with the prevention of the erosion of our coastlines. There is a pilot project which we are considering right now. The SWMCOL has undertaken to do all of the analysis with regards to the feasibility of that project. We will be engaging various ministries, from the Ministry of Agriculture, who I understand is responsible for the coastline in our country. And we will be engaging Ministry of Works also. This is a way, and a very economic way, for us to use tires in order to prevent further erosion of our coastlines. And so this is just one opportunity that we have. I think we need to look for more like that. This simple project that we're doing in a very relatively short portion on the East Coast is going to consume 30,000 tires. 30,000 tires, one shot. And we feel that we have, we may not have enough tires to really feasibility, to do to feasible to show up the entire East Coast. So that's an opportunity. And so we're going to be exploring that definitely. And that will be coming shortly through our ministry, to our line ministry for consideration and approval.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for your responses. Thank you, CEO. I just wanted to say that in terms of the collection of white waste, it is very inadequate in my opinion. My own experience in my constituency is that there's significant gaps. We usually, from my office, we run a program to assist residents in collecting white waste, and we do this quite often, and we collect a lot of white waste. So certainly something, whatever is being done, has to be improved from on the corporation end in relation to the collection of white waste. Yes.
Thank you very much for that comment. I think that on that suggestion, I think you're right. There has to be more collaboration between ourselves and the regional corporations. We will reach out through our CEO to ensure that we improve the collection of white waste material. We hopefully, with that communication and improved communication between ourselves and the regional corporations, we can see an improvement. Like you, I do share your view that there's a lot of room for improvement, and hopefully we can work together with the regional corporations to improve the collection of those items. We already have, they're already collecting like the green waste, which is tree cuttings, etc. And maybe they can introduce a new way to collect white goods on a periodical basis. I mean, to have it done like twice a week or whatever, or sorry, twice for every fortnight, the way the tree cuttings are done may be unreasonable, but at least we will have a way where individuals who want to dispose of these goods will know when we are coming and the time of the month that we will be in your area.
Thank you very much, Mr. Milford. Back to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Member Cummings. So I have a round of questions of my own, but before coming to my round of questions, I have a comment to make about the tires, because I think the tires are something that we should be paying close attention to, and particularly as in your strategic plan, you talk about turning waste into gold. Tires, yes, can be used to prevent erosion, but I also understand that they can be used as artificial reefs, which will help with fishing and the breeding of fishes. Also, I understand that there's a shortage of rubber in the world at the moment, because you remember that rubber comes from trees, the sap of trees. And so the question of recycling tires is something that I think there's potential with there. Now, I don't know if Chairman or CEO you have any comment on that?
Yeah, you're correct. In fact, I will tell you, get some feedback here. I will tell you the same company that has approached us with respect to the coastal erosion protection, they also showed us the ability to actually have the tires placed in the ocean to establish artificial reefs. It is an amazing process. So you are quite correct, Chairman, in saying that. With regard to the shortages of rubber, what we have what our information is this, that everybody worldwide is recycling their tires. So what's happening, everything is going to China, and there's, from the very preliminary information that I have received, there is not such a shortage of recycled rubber. There's quite a lot of rubber moving in particular to China right now. And one cost is very expensive. And so one has to carefully consider how we approach that whole issue of recycling. So that's why we're looking for these low-hanging fruits, what we can take the whole tire and how we can use it to protect our environment.
Thank you. Now, I have a question from someone in the public, and then I'm going to ask some questions of the ministries, and then I'll come back with my round of questions. So the question from the member of the public had to deal with the landfills. Was the Beetham landfill supposed to be closed? And then also, does SWMCOL have any plans to create a new modern landfill / recycling facility within the country as opposed to the old dump methods? And what is the time frame for such?
Okay, so to answer, yes, thank you very much, Chairman. To answer the first question, yes, the Beetham landfill was supposed to be closed. That is on the card still. We will have to revert to the committee with respect to the exact time frame. That's all dependent on the establishment of our upgraded engineered landfills at Forest Park and other areas. There's some work to be done there. With regard to this, what's the second question? If you can, again, I'm sorry. That was the first question was that, I'm sorry, on the second question.
Yes, whether do you have any plans to create a new modern landfill recycling facility as opposed to the old dumping methods?
Yeah. So certainly the new engineered landfills will take into consideration. This is where we have to. This is where we will be. The new engineered landfills will be equipped to fully equipped for recycling purposes. That's the way we're heading right now. I don't know if the CEO wants to add anything else to that, to my comments.
Thank you, Chairman. So I think that our chairman has set out the argument very well. I think the challenge is, and we have to understand why the Beetham hasn't been closed. I think successive governments and other stakeholders have identified the closure, not just at the Beetham, but also at Guanapo. But the challenge is, if we close those landfills today, there is nowhere to put the waste that is being generated by the population. So what the chairman and I and the other members of my team have spoken to, this public education that gets the general population involved in reducing the 70+% of what is being sent to the landfills, which is recyclable, separating that and having it treated with properly will reduce the need for a landfill, but also more importantly, with the new engineered landfills that are being spoken about, we cannot take the new and do the old, because we will end up right where we are today. So we have to engage the participation and the support of our stakeholders in the public domain, because they are critical to not just having a new engineered landfill, but also to sustaining it. It has to be done in a sustainable way. What we've done before has not worked, and we cannot continue with the same formula and expect to get a different result. So those will be my comments in that regard.
And when you speak of sustainable landfills, I assume you're also talking about non-toxic landfills, where you can put these films and you could use biodegradable methods.
Yes, Chairman. Exactly. Our chairman would have spoken about using the methane from the landfills. An engineered landfill would afford you that opportunity to collect the gas, use it possibly at your Point Lisa's estate as a for instance, and reduce your overall greenhouse gas emissions. So there's tremendous opportunity here, not just for one of the SDG goals, but for multiple of the SDG goals to be achieved if we can get that buy-in and that support from the public in changing that behavior around how they treat waste and partnering with us in terms of going forward.
Thank you. I have some questions for the Ministry of Public Utilities. Is the ministry satisfied with SWMCOL's performance in achieving its mandate?
Thank you for that question, Chairman. In terms of the achievement of SWMCOL's mandate, from the discussions that we have had since we started this meeting, we would observe that the protection of the environment, recycling waste, managing of solid waste, and other types of waste are spread across several entities. So we have the EMA, which deals with, the regulations for solid and hazardous waste. We have the Ministry of Planning and Development that is responsible for environmental matters. We have SWMCOL, which has the responsibility for treating with the solid waste. And of course, we have the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, which deals with municipal waste. So while there's an appreciation that SWMCOL has a specific role, from the ministry's perspective, we feel that there is room for there to be an integration of how we approach the management of waste and the preservation of the environment. So I don't want to say that the ministry is not satisfied with SWMCOL's performance, because SWMCOL's performance is mitigated again by the funding that it does not receive, let me say, and the fact that we need to have all players on board to treat with waste management in an integrated manner. And if I may go further, if you would allow me, Chairman, there was significant mention of the beverage containers deposit refund system. And as is well known, the cabinet would have approved that policy in 2019. And as you said, this is something that has been in the making for decades. At the end of the last term of the last government, the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs had advanced the requisite legislation to cabinet. It was sent to the FNGP, but unfortunately, it did not make it out of cabinet before the term closed. So we are in a new term, and we took the opportunity to look again at that system. And of course, one of the things that for any system to work, we must have buy-in, and we must make it as simple as possible for the players, especially the citizenry. So we are having a look at that now. And within that context, we again want to bring all the research to bear from all the players to look at an integrated waste recycle management system. So we are, in fact, engaging the Ministry of Planning at this point in time. As you know, the EMA falls under the Ministry of Planning. And we know that at some point, we will also have to engage the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. But at this point in time, we can say that we have the concurrence, the support of the Ministry of Planning and the EMA to look at this integrated waste recycling management system, of which beverage containers will only be one stream. We also have other streams, as was mentioned before, the e-waste and the tires and so on.
Thank you. So may I take it that with this integrated waste management policy, there's going to be at some point some stakeholder consultation?
As we go along, Chairman.
And does the ministry have any advice for SWMCOL regarding its funding challenges?
Well, I think the chairman would have chairman of SWMCOL would have mentioned some of those before. As we look at challenges mainly in the operations area and looking at funding for dealing with some of the capital expenditures, there is a need to explore other types of financing and grant financing as well. And there are, in fact, a couple initiatives that SWMCOL is currently undertaking that has explored alternative financing arrangements. Maybe I can ask my Deputy Permanent Secretary to speak to a couple of those. DPS.
So thank you, PS, Chairman and members. So one of the key projects for us at SWMCOL is the engineered landfill that the CEO spoke to. And we have been in discussions with multilateral agencies to look at both a mix of technical cooperation, grant resources, as well as the possibility of a longer-term loan as the need arises. So we are in that process of identifying the opportunities for accessing grant resources. In addition, the chairman of SWMCOL had also indicated that we are also engaging with some countries to see if bilateral assistance, both in terms of grant financing and in terms of technical expertise in all areas, including that of getting the behavior change that is so very critical for any successful solid waste management system in the country.
Thank you. Ministry of Finance. Does the Ministry of Finance feel satisfied with SWMCOL's performance and its adherence to the SEPMM?
Chairman, thank you. Overall, it is good, except where we hear that the financial statements for 19 and 20 is still outstanding. In terms of the other reports, I would like to go to the other reports. The strategic plan, the last one we have on file is for the period 2015 to 2019. However, there was a plan from 2018 to 2022, and the ministry commented on the plan, but we are yet to get receive the approved strategic plan for that period. In terms of annual meeting, the last meeting was held for the financial year, September 30th, 2017. In terms of the debt portfolio, the last report we have was for September 2020. The last confirmed minutes was for the meeting held on February 23rd, 2021. In terms of cash flow of operation, the last quarterly report the ministry have was for June 30th, 2020. Litigation proceedings, June 30th, 2020. Return of awards of contract, August 2020. So basically, with the quarterly reports, they can do better in that area. But all in all, I think it is overall good. But they can continue to be more timely in those reports.
Thank you. Now, I know that we are in a period of economic hardship or decline, and we've heard a lot about the challenges facing inadequate funding. What impressed me on my last visit to the Baltic countries was I saw that some countries are actually importing waste to convert waste into fuel and to earn income. Do you see, as SWMCOL have identified in their strategic plan, that there is potential gold in waste, and that is a way that they could become an income earner for the country?
Chairman, I think I should defer that question to the line ministry, who will be more on the operational issue. That's a more operational question, and they should be able to provide our response.
All right. Well, before we go to that, how can the ministry assist with funding for SWMCOL to become more OSHA compliant?
Yeah, I think SWMCOL should put in a request through the line ministry, and then it could come to the budget division of the Ministry of Finance. And that is where we normally, the company will, to be more compliant with those matters or those issues, I think they should put that in their budgets. And that could be done for the 2021-22 budget period.
Thank you very much. So if I may now come back to the company, I had a round of questions. I think we are, Mr. Chairman, may I take it that we can agree that environmental guiding principles, values, policies, and legislation should be framed properly, and they should be followed strictly for eco-friendly sustainability. Now, you have identified in your submissions a number of gaps for the country achieving a holistic, integrated, and environmentally sound waste management system. And I want to focus on a couple of the areas that you identified. One was weak legislation and enforcement, and you spoke about that. The other was socioeconomic issues, inadequate public education and awareness, institutional and organizational inadequacies. Now, can you indicate what is being done to eliminate or reduce some of these deficiencies?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Chairman. In terms of the legislative side, we will support whatever our line ministry, we will support whatever legislation is necessary to get this thing right in terms of how we treat with waste, okay? In terms of the social issues, this has been given a lot of attention in our 2021 to 2025 strategic plan, how it is we plan to address the education process to the population of Trinidad and Tobago and why they should recycle, why they should, why they should not dump, create illegal dumps, etc. Those are that's the method that we're using in order to address the communication gap between what it is we're trying to achieve as SWMCOL and the general population. In terms of the institutions, I will turn you over to the CEO. He's in a better position to answer that part of that question. So CEO, if you can step in here.
And we have established
Thank you, Chairman. The cabinet would have approved a new unit inside SWMCOL, and we would have referenced some of the output of that unit in terms of the institutional strengthening that needs to be done. So our chairman has already mentioned that we will address in public education as part of our new strategic plan. But also very importantly in the strategic plan, we are linking very clearly our monitoring and evaluation of that public education so that we can come back to this committee and give an account as stewards as to the effectiveness of these programs in terms of changing the behaviors. So that is also part of the institutional strengthening, because the work that is being done internally here by our unit, whether it is to develop the position papers or to support research related to legislation that our line ministry may or other ministries may be interested in, that has to be done within the broader context. I think P.S. Duke would have spoken to it as well in terms of we are not an island unto ourselves here at SWMCOL, but we work very closely with other stakeholders. I'm pleased to say who we partner with frequently and on an ongoing basis and from whom we sense a great deal of support. So not just with our line ministry, but with the other ministries and with the other agencies of government and even with NGOs, we find that we have good support in terms of the work that we are approaching. And we are very pleased to hear of the reception that we are getting from the committee today in terms of the work that we have done and that we are doing. We continue to feel that it is important work, and we continue to feel that the work that we are doing will make a difference in terms of the environmental and social outcomes to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. So
thank you. Now, one of the things that I picked up as a theme in this discussion is the lack of enabling legislation. And I think Chairman Milford talked about you're not an enforcement division, you're not an authority, so you cannot police. There's legislation in place, but the enforcement is weak. You need more enforcement. And so I want to focus for a moment on the multiplicity of the lack of enabling legislation. Was there ever supposed to be a Solid Waste Management Act making you into an authority, or was that proposal ever on the cards?
Chairman, I'm not sure, quite frankly. I'm not sure if there was. I'm not too sure whether or not the other members from SWMCOL are aware of that. Maybe they could answer that question. But
more importantly, am I sensing that you could see that you would be in a much better position to carry out your mandate as stewards if you were in fact an authority rather than operating as a limited company?
I would say that we'll have to give that question a lot of thought, Chairman. We would like to see enforcement. At this point in time, we don't have, as I said earlier, and you just pointed out, Chairman, the authority at all. It would entail us really reorganizing how we do business in order to become an authority, in order to be to enforce, to be able to police the removal of waste in this country, or providing for the removal of waste in this country. I will say this, however, that I think it is incumbent on all citizens of this country to, first of all, understand the impact when they throw garbage out the window, it's happening on our environment. And the economy also, because it costs money for us to be cleaning up this all the time.
Chairman, I just wanted to ask you though, I'm trying to imagine forward. We have an environmental commission, which is a superior court of record dealing with environmental matters. We have an environmental management authority, and we have SWMCOL. We have legislation under the EMA Act. We have legislation with Litter Act. And I know that there are things that one can bring private prosecutions, both under the EMA Act and also generally in the law. Is it that SWMCOL has never thought about the possibility of bringing private prosecutions or bringing proceedings under the EMA Act and the Environmental Commission? I'm just wondering, or are you just comfortable relying on complaints to the police or to the EMA?
Well, I'll put it this way, Chairman, if you allow me to. I think we have a lot of laws on the books. And to say that we're going to have another authority to enforce the laws, we don't see that as, at least I don't see that as necessary. What I see as necessary is that the laws that we have existing on our books, that we enforce them.
But who is enforcing them? Is it the police? Is it the EMA? Who are you envisaging will be enforcing these laws? Do we need more litter wardens, for example?
Well, I think, yes, you're right. We need more focus on the litter warden program. We used to have litter wardens in the past. We have, I'm not too sure where that is right now, to be quite frank. But I think that if we can, I always draw reference to the breathalyzer and the Act, and how we had existing laws in place. If you get into an accident and you're intoxicated, there is prosecution under that. But with the introduction of that act, we've seen a drastic reduction, in my opinion, in fatal accidents in Trinidad and Tobago year over year. And so we have the laws, and it just shows how we just need to enforce the laws. And whether it's been EMA or the police or the litter wardens who have the authority to go out into areas and take evidence and charge people for the dumping of rubbish, I in my opinion, it already exists. I think sometimes we bring in all of these new authorities and we try to solve the problem that way. If we just work on enforcing the laws we have on the books right now through the various agencies, I think we can see a big improvement in where we are today.
So do you have any specific recommendations in terms of any amendments to our laws or the need for new laws that will help solid waste?
Yes, I think specifically it's the fines that go with these illegal activity. I think the fines need to be increased. Fining somebody $500, $1,000 for littering, to me, that is not sufficient. I mean, if these fines were significant enough to deter people when they are caught, Chairman, I think that will go a long way. And not only increasing the fines, when, you have to catch them. And when you catch them, you prosecute them. Then I think that will go a long way in individuals, in preventing individuals from throwing garbage out the window. How many times you've seen people, you're driving wherever and people just arbitrarily throwing bottles and paper out of the windows. If we can capture those people and increase the fines, I think that will go a long way into deterring the activity.
And you talked about weak legislation. Do you have any specific recommendations to strengthen legislation?
I think the legislation should give the police, for instance, more power to investigate and really get the police involved because you would see someone dumping garbage and you call the police station and there's no reaction at all from the police. That has happened in the past, unfortunately. Some of them try, and then as with everything else, the police force is stretched also. So I think in any legislation that would give the police more power to prosecute these individuals would assist. But to be quite frank, I'm not in a position at this time to say what areas within the specific legislation that can be improved. What we can do at SWMCOL is have a look at the legislation again and provide recommendations as to how we see those, how we could strengthen the legislation to address this unfortunate situation we have in this country.
Thank you. Now, I understand that Member Lee has joined us, so I'm going to invite him to ask a few questions, and then we will go to Member Mark. Member Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for joining late. I had an emergency. I apologize. Chairman Milford, as a member of Parliament for Point of Peer, we have always had an issue and have had an issue again in the dry season where the forest park dump, especially when you have the crosswinds and the smoke that is coming from the landfill has been sweeping across, and it's a perennial thing year on year. So it's a question that has always been raised, and somehow, we have always had in the past where under previous chairmen or previous CEOs that they would talk about doing something within the dump to avoid that from happening. But to date, that doesn't seem to have worked. So I'm asking for the people of especially Claxton Bay, Couva South area, when you get the east to the west winds blowing, it is really a health hazard and makes life unbearable for the people of Claxton Bay, Springvale, and Couva South. Could you respond, or is there anything in place to correct that?
Yeah, welcome to the meeting, member, Mr. Lee. This problem has been a challenge for SWMCOL, and I'll hand you over to the CEO who might be in a better position to answer your question. But I would just like to say that I understand the problem firsthand, having grown up in that area. I would say this, that we have seen a reduction year over year with regards to the fires at that location. It is an issue. There is opportunity for when we establish, for instance, the engineered landfills, we've been in a position to capture that methane that's coming out of the ground. Because sometimes these fires are started in all different ways. It could be deliberate. It could be a bushfire that starts up. And once they get ignited, and I'll ask the CEO to speak just in a short while, it is tasked to bring under control. And that is why we have people on standby 24 hours a day to address any fires that may take place at our locations. But I agree, it is an issue of grave concern to all of us. We have done some air quality tests in the past, and they haven't triggered any shown any major issues. I think what you're referring to is that when we have these fires, and how do we control them? And so I'll hand you over now to our Chief Executive Officer, who will speak to that further.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to first agree with you, Chairman, that this is an area of concern for us here at SWMCOL. And that being said, we have over the last few years, the record will show, been able to manage fires at our landfills, not just at Forest Park, but also at Guanapo and Beetham. As you've indicated, and as the member has asked, all of these fires can have a negative effect on the air quality of the citizens who surround our landfills. And so we have taken steps. We have an annual fire program where we take mitigation measures, or landfill fire and control mitigation plan that we execute every year with the dry season in order to reduce, and it has shown in terms of our results, good effect. Having said that, and this is no way to say that fires cannot occur at our landfills. They can and they do, as Chairman would have mentioned, and as the committee well knows, part of the collection of waste as a byproduct, there is methane gas. And if that is not being collected and transported away in a structured manner, the gas collects and is available for incineration. And various actors, as the Chairman has indicated, may, for whatever reason, cause those ignitions. But having said all of that, we continue to work to reduce and ensure that those things do not happen to us the furthest extent possible. In addition, with particular respect to Forest Park, we do have a challenge in the area, again, with, I want to say, illegal dump sites that are not under the purview of SWMCOL, and with actors in the waste management space that take advantages of opportunities related to the length of the road to dump waste indiscriminately and then set it on fire in order to retrieve some product or the other. And in fact, Member Lee, I would indicate that yesterday, coming up from San Fernando, I did see a fire on the roadway to Forest Park, such that our team would have helped to put out, but it would have brought some discomfort to the residents of Springvale and Claxon Bay, as you would have said. These things, I think the chairman of the committee would have alluded to. There are actors out there in the space doing illegal items which are not under the purview, nor is SWMCOL structured to control. Having said that as well, we have increased patrols along that road, and we are working with the National Operations Center to include cameras so that we can have a live 24-hour feed of the road. We continue to engage with the regional corporation in terms of their municipal police patrolling, and any support that the member can offer us in persuading or encouraging the municipal corporation to support us in that regard will also be appreciated. But we have engaged with them. They have been very open to our discussions, and they have sent the municipal police to police the area because, again, they have the requisite authority to control the activity in a way that SWMCOL cannot as a private entity. So I hope that treats with the question as asked, Member Lee.
Thank you so much, Mr. CEO. As a follow-up question, you got into my second question, that link road as you come off the Claxon Bay flyover exit. About 3 years ago, I had met with SWMCOL, the CEO at Springvale, about 3-4 years ago, and that complaining about that same link road and the state of the garbage collection that has been done out there at that link road at the exit. And SWMCOL had assured us as a community that they would ensure that is kept clean. Sometimes it's cleaner than other times, but it's not of a consistent basis. And I'm a little bit surprised that you talk about the municipal corporation police manning that area or providing some sort of security support. I also always got the impression that SWMCOL would have been doing that, given that the location of the dump and that road is the access road to enter Forest Park. So I don't know if you could clarify that issue, because it is an issue for the residents of the unsightly state and also the individuals who gather out there, as a work site. So if you can add some clarity to that.
Thank you, member. It must be clear that SWMCOL is a limited liability company and clearly does not have responsibility for roadways here in Trinidad and Tobago. So I want to make clear that our support and participation is from the context of our mandate, where we are trying to ensure that the environment on the whole in the communities that we operate are in as good a condition as they can be. And so we continue to provide that support in terms of cleaning the roadway. We do this regularly and almost daily, because what does in fact happens, and what is quite a challenge for us and does impact our expenses, is the fact that people are on a daily basis, multiple times a day, sometimes starting as early as 4 o'clock in the morning, illegally dumping on that road. And that is a concern for us. And the municipal corporations are our stakeholder. They're a partner with us. We work very closely with them. But again, SWMCOL is not an authority. It's not a municipal corporation. It does not have a police force at its disposal.
CEO, may I interject here?
Sure.
Because as a limited liability company, you are a person in law.
Yes.
Now, we're looking at enforcement. And there are many laws in place, as we have heard, dealing with littering offenses. Summary Offences Act, Public Health Act, Litter Act, Municipal Corporations, Dry River Act, Agricultural Fires Act, Forest Act. Under a lot of these offenses, it's not only the police who can bring and prosecute complaints. Any person can lodge a complaint under the Summary Offences Act and bring that complaint, including a company. Also, if you look at the Environmental Management Act, there's something called a direct private party action. Section 69 of the 62 of the Environmental Management Act lays out the environmental requirements, and they talk about releasing pollutants into the environment, unauthorized activities in environmentally sensitive areas. They list a number of EMA violations. And 69 says any private party can institute a civil action in the commission against any other person for any of those violations. So even though you are a limited liability company, what I'm suggesting to you is that you do have the potential of being able to prosecute matters both in the summary courts and in the civil courts. And I say this in the context of your mandate is educating the public on the hazards of poor sanitation, on the role in maintaining a clean and healthy environment, and maintaining close liaison with community groups and other public and private agencies in planning and undertaking countrywide and region-wide cleanup campaigns. So I don't know whether in your new Charlie reincarnation, you can be stressing the enforcement and compliance aspects, but I'm also going to suggest to say that we're going to leave it entirely to the police or to leave it entirely to the municipal corporations may not be sufficient, because you are the experts when it comes to waste and the prosecution of waste.
Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to clarify. I would like to say, if that was the impression that was being given, I would like to apologize. That is not our position. In fact, we have, using the vehicle that you just mentioned, brought action in the courts against persons in the past, and it's something we intend to continue doing. And in fact, my mention earlier of the cameras in close proximity and our work, again, with another stakeholder, the National Operations Center, to have 24-hour viewing is also to support that kind of activity. So where we can, we will ensure, again, we are not structured. So my thing is, as an organization, you have to be focused on what is it that you want to do. We have some very big goals related to the engineered landfill, which is long in waiting, which has the potential to affect the lives of every citizen here. We have big goals around recycling, and those things require focus. At the same time, we need the cooperation, not just of the man in the street, but also municipal corporations. Wherever SWMCOL finds stakeholders, our mandate, we interpret it as broadly as that, is to engage with that. But then, as with everywhere in Trinidad and Tobago, there are those who misbehave. And so we will treat with them as well with the tools that we have. And we continue to strengthen both our private security related to the landfill, our partnership with the security forces, and where we can establish that someone has committed a crime, and particularly where it would be on video, we would expect that the courts would support us in making sure that they are paying for their misdeeds.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Member Lee. Please continue.
Okay. Just one final question, Chairman Vero, to SWMCOL. I'm heartened about the cameras. I think that's a good initiative, and I hope that happens sooner than later. It will go a long way in that particular area, Forest Park, in the security aspect also. My final question would be, I don't know if it was asked, Chairman Vera, because I came in late. At a point in time, a couple of years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, at one point in time, there was a discussion that the Forest Park dump or landfill would have been the country's only landfill, and everything was going to be coming to the Forest Park landfill, and the residents of my area were very concerned about that. So I want to bring that question back up. Is that still on the table, or that has now gone away? I need a clarification on that. I don't know if that question was asked this morning.
And it was not asked in that way, member, but I embrace the opportunity to explain the position and to perhaps clarify. You know, the challenge, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but in other domiciles, is that everybody wants progress, nobody wants change. But change is part of the progress equation. So we have to embrace it as an element. What we have said in our earlier testimony here before this committee was that our intention is, and still is, to build an engineered landfill at Forest Park. However, we've also said that we cannot continue with the same behaviors that we have over the last few decades with respect to how we deal with waste. And we have called, both myself and my chairman, along with our line ministry, have called for a deeper engagement with the national community in terms of personally assessing how their own impact on the environment, in terms of assessing whether that 70+% of recycled material that is put into the bag and sent to the landfills should actually be there, and whether they could assist SWMCOL in taking those waste streams and packaging them appropriately, starting with recycling at more of our progress against the SDGs to create an opportunity for the engineered landfill to work as it should, because you are right, and the residents in the communities that you serve and that you have mentioned are also correct. There is no way that we could now take 700 tons and place it in Forest Park in the same way that we have done over the years and expect anything but that it would be firstly, it would be filled in short order. And secondly, it would pose some sort of threat to them. But that is not what is being envisaged. What is being envisaged is a fundamental rethinking of our approach to waste management, starting on a personal level. We are engaging here at SWMCOL in identifying the different waste streams, providing position papers, and with the support of our ministry, getting policy decisions on how we approach these things so that as we move into an engineered landfill, we will not be producing waste at the volume that we are and causing some discomfort to the residents in the communities you have mentioned.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. CEO, for enlightening me. I think that's about it for me at this point in time, Chairman Vero.
Just a follow-up. You said that you have this proposed modern landfill. Do you have a time frame for it?
We don't have the exact time frame. As we would have mentioned, funding is one of the elements that we continue to clarify. But in the meantime, the constituent elements around the studies that need to be done, the position papers that need to be done, the public education that needs to be done, we continue to work on those elements which are not currently being constrained in terms of our progress. And as soon as we can get funding clearly ironed out, then we will be able to be in a better position to give an answer as to date.
Okay, thanks. I have a question from a member of the public. Does SWMCOL have any formal relationship with the scrap iron dealers where you can sell valuable items sourced from the white waste to be recycled?
The short answer to that is no. And again, Chairman, for the benefit of the public, waste iron, scrap iron, does not fall under the purview of SWMCOL, right? Just in general, under the current arrangements, that falls under the remit of the Ministry of Planning. So there again, as we've noted, and as our permanent secretary has noted, there are a number of areas where we would benefit as a country from clarity, and just having maybe an either intergovernmental or some other kind of committee consider how all of these things can come together in a way that is beneficial. But as the chairman says, that's not within my remit to speak to. That is just to advise and note to the committee.
Okay, so I'm going to be passing you on to Member Mark. But before that, I just wanted to see if I understood what you were saying just now. So you are advocating a fundamental rethinking of our approach to handling waste, and you are hoping to create a more economically responsible society here in Trinidad and Tobago, using a mix of things. One is through better education aimed at fostering buy-in by the citizenry. The other one is through trying to create an entrepreneurship where people could see the value in waste and recycling. And then the third thing is using enforcement measures to those who are being irresponsible. Is that a fair assessment of what you're hoping to see?
If I may, Chairman, yes, you're correct.
Thank you. Member Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I ask the chairman of SWMCOL the following question? Mr. Chairman, in light of what the chairman of our committee has just said, and in light of all that we have been discussing earlier, would you agree with me that there is need for consideration of some coordinating mechanism in the interim involving all the major agencies and governmental ministries that deal with the environment and waste, hazardous inclusive? So there would be a coordinated approach whilst we are pending the appropriate legislation to deal with the environmental challenges and for us to attain the sustainable development goals set by the United Nations. Can I have your thoughts on this?
Yes, thank you, Member Mark. To answer your question, yes, I would say this, that there is, as the CEO pointed out earlier, there is significant, in my opinion, collaboration between the various stakeholders. However, there is always room for improvement. We do engage the EMA, we through our line ministry, we engage other ministries to assist us in this process, in particular, Ministry of Local Government. But there is always room for improvement, okay? We can't do this on our own, it's obvious. So we've recognized that. And if you look at the input that we've had in the beverage container bill, for example, we've had all the stakeholders giving us input. In fact, we had hosted, if I recall, back in 2019 or 2020, I think it was 2020, we had hosted at the Hyatt some of the stakeholders, for instance, Supermarket Association and some others, in really getting their input into how this thing called the Beverage Container Act should look and what they want to get from it. So I think we do have systems in place to coordinate our efforts, but like everything else, there is considerable room for improvement. And we're working towards that. As I said earlier, it's like flying the plane and fixing the engines and improving the engines while you move forward. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah. All right, let me just move on. Now, SWMCOL is not operating at full capacity. All approved positions have not been filled. SWMCOL is challenged, as you have rightly said over and over, with funding support for human and capital programs. And you're aware of the challenges.
I think that question was asked, Member Mark.
Oh, that was already asked. All right. May I move on to the question as it relates to a resignation in your submission at the top management level? You had a former CEO resigning. Could you share with this committee what was the reason for this former CEO's resignation?
To answer your question, I am not in a position to answer that question right now. I can do the research to find out reasons for his departure. But I will get back to the committee with the reasons for that department, individual, that CEO, that previous CEO departing the position.
Now, in addition, you had submitted to us, I think it was in Appendix 2, in response to question 16, you indicated that the following are in progress. 1, modified procurement handbook, which was to be submitted to the regulator for approval. Modified special guidelines where applicable, and that is supposed to be submitted to the regulator for approval. I wanted to ask Mr. Chairman or the CEO, given that the bill was passed, that is the Public Procurement Bill, which is now an act, some 5 years ago, and is awaiting proclamation. What is the reason for SWMCOL only now developing its procurement handbook? And could you provide this committee with a timeline for completion and approval of those documents?
CEO.
Thanks for the question, Member Mark. What SWMCOL has done is, with respect to all of the legal requirements that SWMCOL can have advanced at this stage, we have advanced those. Without the proclamation of the legislation, a couple items remain. So we cannot truly change our procurement handbook, as a for instance, with respect to our tenders committee, until the legislation is proclaimed, which then changes how the tenders committee would operate. So to do that now kind of puts us in a position where, yes, we will be in compliance with the new law, but we would be out of compliance with the old law. So we can't make that step. So we have done all of the steps identified that we can do with the current legislation. And when the legislation is proclaimed, we can make these final changes and have them implemented.
Okay. What about sharing with this committee as it relates to your IT infrastructure, the development of your IT, information technology infrastructure? Would you want to provide us with some details of your upgrades and what is being done as it relates to your IT infrastructure?
Thank you again, Member Mark. So what we have done, and our answers to the questions would have noted that we are in the process of doing IT upgrades. I'm happy to report that our human resource information system has come live as of April 1, and we expect that project to be completed at the end of June, and the other elements of the IT upgrade, we also expect to be completed by the end of June. And what is in particular focus is the digitization of records related to inventory. And with respect to our purchase orders, as you know, we have a number of sites. This upgrade allows us to remove the paperwork involved. We believe to increase efficiency. And we also believe that it gives our finance team actionable data in a timely manner, such that our reports then, and ultimately our audits and so on, will be done in a more timely manner. So all of these things we expect to see come to fruition by the end of June. Work has been advanced over the last couple of years, and we are in the final stages of implementation.
Could you share with this committee CEO what are the expected benefits to be derived from the upgrades that you mentioned? That is the IT infrastructure upgrades?
Certainly, Member Mark. So with respect to the human resource system, we are moving away from an antiquated paper-based system to a system that is now live. We anticipate an increase in productivity as supervisors no longer have to come to the HR team physically and then have documents pulled and then sent back with the possibility of loss. We see an opportunity for increased productivity in that area. Additionally, as we come into our performance management system appraisal at the end of April, we also anticipate that the appraisals will be done online, and that information will be fed directly into the system. Again, moving away from a paper-based system, again, we think adding productivity to us in terms of our systems. I would have mentioned a little bit before in terms of the financial system. We are implementing a module on our Microsoft 365 Dynamics-based system so that we can have a live count of what is in stores at all time at the head office, so that we, again, think that this affords us the opportunity when we get requests from our line ministry and from the investments division of the Ministry of Finance to be able to turn around the information they request in a shorter time frame and provide them with actionable data in as quick as possible as a time. So not only with those stakeholders, but also internal stakeholders, we expect that less purchase orders are going to be lost by someone's desk or misplaced, because everything is now going to be online, and where someone in the beta may have requested a spare part of some sort, the procurement team here at head office is able to see that request, make their notations, and give feedback, and all the stakeholders in the system are able to see in real time what is the status of their order and what needs to be done next in order to move the ball forward. This is, for us, going to be a great improvement in productivity, and we are in final stages of testing. We have already done 3 or 4 sessions of training with the requisite teams in terms of its implementation, and we expect that would be live by the end of June.
Yeah, may I ask my final question to the chairman of SWMCOL? Mr. Chairman, as we rush towards 2030 and our commitments as a nation to the SDGs, and particularly those that have been outlined by the CEO, can you share with us what we as a committee can do to assist you in realizing your part in our achieving our SDGs, particularly goals 12 to 15, as outlined earlier by your CEO?
Thank you very much, Member Mark. It is vitally important that the committee supports us in terms of how the process that we're going to right now in developing our procedures that we want to put in place over the next few years to address recycling in our country, to address the formation of our engineered landfills. A big part of the whole process is that when we make requests for adjustments or changes in the legislative agenda, we want to make sure that we get buy-in from all members that whatever we are doing, we have the full support of the committee. What I mean by that is that sometimes, we have good intentions, but we don't always get the right support to deliver the end product. And what I mean by that is, in particular, for instance, the beverage container bill, we want to ensure that when that bill comes, that everyone understands how important this piece of legislation is to our country. As I said earlier, Member Mark, it is unfortunate that we have people within CARICOM or neighboring CARICOM partners that already have legislation in place, that has a process for recycling in place, and we don't have anything in place as yet. We want to see the commitment from the committee that we make a start towards this whole process. We will never have it, and I know the chairman had mentioned that we have to have our bills perfect and everything perfectly aligned. But quite frankly, I haven't seen a bill that is perfect. We've got to start somewhere. I think in particular, the beverage container bill is a place to start. In terms of the enforcement of our legislation or laws in this country, we would like to see that support coming out also. I promise that we will get back to the committee on what adjustments to the legislation we see as important. Really and truly, it is that level of commitment from the committee, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that will support what it is we as a company are trying to achieve. And that in a nutshell is what I would like to see cooperation from the committee and the assistance from this committee to really get us to a place where we can begin to treat our environment differently.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Member Mark. I'm going to let the last question be Member Leasing's question. So I'm going to put my questions now, and then we will end with Member Leasing before we close. I want to come back to where we had started when I had identified a number of things for which there was no progress to date, little or no achievement. So what I'm going to ask the company is, can you please provide me with the reasons for no progress and the timeline for implementation? First, you had indicated the establishment of a data gathering and monitoring system for capturing and measuring the food loss index and the food waste index. Why has there been no progress in this, and timeline for implementation, please? I think you're on mute.
Sorry, Chairman, thank you for your question.
Question 64, page 15 of the submissions.
Yes. Chairman, as I would have mentioned before, we are trying to, we are tasked with doing a number of things as the committee would have found in terms of our discussion. We are doing a number of things across a number of patches. But we would have also mentioned that we're developing position papers. I think the chairman would have mentioned his opening remarks with respect to e-waste and with respect to organics. This speaks to organics, talking about the food loss, that kind of waste. So we are in process now, developing the tools so that we can accurately monitor this. In that regard, a waste characterization study that we have planned would help. I would note that we have planned this for a couple of years and we haven't received the funding. But we continue to look for other ways to fund where central government doesn't have the wherewithal. And we continue to look at other partners to help us. And in the meantime, as I would have indicated, we continue to progress the things that we can progress. So I cannot come back to you with the data unless I've done the characterization to tell you exactly how much food waste we are collecting at this point in time. That data does not exist at this point in time. So I cannot then create an index related to the performance over time if I'm not measuring it. But we have, and our board has been very supportive in that regard. We are looking very closely at all our monitoring and evaluation, not just from the almost theoretical in terms of what we are doing internally, but our board has really pushed back on us, how are we impacting the citizenry? Because we are operating in a place as stewards, and we need to be able to report back to those that support us with funding, how exactly we are creating that impact. So that focus that the board has given us, that challenge, you will see very clearly in our new strategic plan coming out. And we will be, and as I've said, we are actioning the technical tools to enable this. And as soon as we have the other constituent parts, there will be progress. And with all of the items, the answer is of similar vein.
So that would also include partnering with the Institute of Marine Affairs on coastal protection, so the sharing of information on coastal and plastic debris density.
So again, this is about data monitoring. It's about evaluation. We have a very good working relationship with the Institute of Marine Affairs. We just conducted a beach cleanup with them, not in Shaka Shakari, I believe. 520 pounds of garbage or so, if my numbers are correct. So we are partnering with them in the operational activities, but what you are speaking to is again, what I have spoken about, this reimagining of how we treat with waste. It's not just about going and pick up 500 pounds over here and 200 pounds over there. Does the man in the street have the ability to see exactly what the amount of waste is being generated? Where is that waste being sent? How is it impacting? We need to provide the structures, some of which we are doing with our IT infrastructure, some of which we are doing with our position papers. And again, we continue to work with our partnerships to ensure that when all of these things come together, we can be able to, again, show the impact that SWMCOL is having with respect to the environment in conjunction with all of the stakeholders with whom we operate.
Yeah, I remember once flying over, coming back from Tobago or one of the islands, and coming over the North Coast and seeing a river of plastic debris coming out of the Bocas. So maybe visual images of that and what you see on beaches could be part of the tool for educating the public. The other thing was you talked about issuing EOIs to identify opportunities for establishing private-public partnerships locally, regionally, and internationally to secure the sustainability and viability of all resource recovery lines. Where are we with that?
Go ahead, Chief.
Again, Chairman, thanks for your question. I mean, what we have, and we mark ourselves very hard here at SWMCOL. So when I say no, when the question is asked and we say no progress to date, what we are saying is there is nothing tangible that we can show for the efforts thus far. However, we have sent out EOIs with respect to tires on more than one occasion. We have advanced EOIs with respect to plastics on more than one occasion. But do I have something tangible to report to the committee? The answer is no. And so our chairman would have spoken to that in some form prior by identifying that we continue to speak to people all of the time, but the arrangements that we come into, again, as stewards, must make sense not just for SWMCOL, but for Trinidad and Tobago. So we cannot just enter into an arrangement where the net effect is that SWMCOL is going to be asking Ministry of Finance for more funds. That is a non-starter, right? So our board is pressing us, and Chairman Milford will correct me if I'm wrong, but they're pressing us to when we bring a proposal to the board, it not only must it satisfy the environmental goals and the sustainable development goals, it must also satisfy our financial stewardship that we are required to perform on behalf of the funds that we have been given. So that is, I mean, if our explanation, if our marking of ourselves in that way is incorrect, I'll stand to be corrected, but that is the state of it. We do not have actionable progress to report, and so we say there is no progress.
Okay, thank you. Now, at question 65, you indicated that the following items regarding the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals had no achievements to date. Explore the feasibility of establishing waste-to-energy facilities in conjunction with the ministry responsible for renewable energy and with the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission.
Again, Chairman, the Ministry of Energy would have taken lead on this, and they would have sent out proposals. I believe proposals did come in from a number of entities, some of whom made presentations to SWMCOL as well. We did have a representative on the evaluation committee, as my understanding goes, but unfortunately, this exercise was not completed. So the evaluation was not done within the required time. The tenders were no longer valid. And we were advised by the Ministry of Energy that they would need to restart the exercise. So again, the way we market, there's no progress. I'm not going to come here and say we start something and then it didn't work out. It is still no progress. And in terms of our reporting back to the country, if somebody asks me if something has been done, the answer is no.
Okay, thank you. And then my last one, partnering with the Ministry of Health and the municipal corporations to develop a waste management system for the proper disposal of biomedical waste and similar hazardous waste.
We can, so in terms of biomedical waste, as I would have mentioned, that remains the responsibility of the Ministry of Health. Their main way of disposal of that waste is through incineration, right? We do not have, I cannot say that we have done anything significant in that area. The Ministry of Health continues to have a system that treats with the biomedical waste, I think, in a fairly adequate manner. For this committee's support, I would say, and again, to the point that my chairman keeps mentioning, with regard to private medical institutions, there may be some opportunity to ensure that same level of compliance with the guidelines from Ministry of Health. But again, SWMCOL does not have the manpower, the capacity to do that kind of investigation. And it would be for the Ministry of Health to advise whether or not the systems they have in place in that regard are adequate or not.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Member Leasing.
Thank you very kindly, Chairman. And I know we're about to wrap up now. I'm just looking at Appendix 9, major capital projects from 2016 to current, Appendix number 9, which was submitted to us. And I just wanted to know, please, first of all, congratulations, because I think the bulk of your major capital projects are completed or near completion. I just wanted an update, please, on the Beetham Welfare Facility Upgrade Program.
Thank you, Member. I'm pleased to report that shortly after my joining SWMCOL in 2019, we were able to move our workers into the facility. And so that facility stands 100% complete. I will also say, though, that some other infrastructure is required around the facility related to electrical, which we are in progress and in action on in terms of expanding the electrical capacity with our partners at TNTech, as well as providing other more permanent arrangements related to the septic systems and so on. So those things would continue. But I'm pleased to say that the facility is functional, it's operational, and it's being used for which it was designed. And we look forward to many years of its use. If I may, Member, as well, we are also in the process of, and hopefully within short period of time, we have, as you speak to capital projects, we would have worked on putting in a wheel wash at the Beetham. We know it has been a concern of a number of years by many people, the dust coming out of the landfill. We have a solution for that. We expect within the next couple of months to have that commissioned. It is already in place and installed. We will be proceeding with some paving work in addition to that. And we expect in very short order that the area around the landfill would begin to take a different kind of look, and one we think will be more appropriate for people passing by on the way to the capital city.
Thanks very much, Mr. CEO. Well, I'm very excited and pleased to hear that as well. And Chairman, I have no more questions. I just really am very grateful for what I've heard here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Leasing. So I think that is bringing us close to the end of the hearing. I would now like to invite closing comments from members of the company and the relevant ministries.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I want to thank the committee for allowing us to come here this morning into this afternoon to let you know where we stand as a company and what it is, some of the things that we're doing. The environment and how we treat with our environment is at the foremost a priority for SWMCOL. For too long, it is the opinion of the board. We have neglected and in some cases, and in many cases, ill-treated our environment. And it is our firm commitment that we as an organization will do what we have to do in order to make our country a better place when it comes to how we treat with our environment, not only for us, but for our children and those that are coming after us. I want to thank you again, Chairman, for allowing us to come here this morning and the committee members. And I want to wish all of you all a great day. And we look forward to you all out there helping us to clean up the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Ministry of Finance.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to commend SWMCOL on the operational work they are doing. I wish them all the success. Also, the Ministry of Finance will continue to do its part in ensuring compliance and ensuring that any assistance that the company needs, we are willing to assist in that regard so that they can achieve their stated objectives. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Ministry of Public Utilities.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank the committee for allowing the ministry to give its input today. As we have heard, SWMCOL cannot treat with this matter of the management of the environment in isolation. So at the Ministry of Public Utilities, we will do all we can to continue to provide strategic guidance, policy direction, and to foster collaboration with other agencies and ministries along with SWMCOL so that they are able to effectively execute on their mandate. And so we thank you for today.
Thank you. And I would like to thank you all very much for your contributions today. They will be very useful for this committee in its future work on the subject and in drawing up a report and recommendations for action to the relevant authorities. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our business today, and this meeting is now suspended. In closing, may I thank SWMCOL, the media, and the viewing and listening audience. Good day.